My Hero Academia is okay.
Got back from Popeyes. Do you want a bite of my chicken breast?
Now, before I can tell you about what I think makes Vigilantes so good, I want to get into a little bit of the reasons why I stopped really enjoying the main series. I'm going to say it. All for One is not really that interesting. He kept way too relevant throughout the story, and I think it took any potential development Shigaraki had to come into his own. The battle with All Might in him was the literal and symbolic passing of the torch to a new generation. But no, that's not the case. At least for half of the generation, because All Might lost his powers, but All for One, nah, he's still in the background scheming, and he gets up to a lot more shenanigans later on. And I don't think he needed to die or anything there, but if something happened along the lines of All Might, where he was effectively out of commission and needed to rely on Shigaraki, that would make for a far more interesting arc for him, as he'd have to actually develop into his own as a leader. And we see glimpses of that before the later half of the manga happens. Midoriya is boring. His power and character development stagnates for way too long. Now, when it comes to his powers, it was a lot more interesting early on because, oh wow, he breaks his limb each time he uses everything. Let's see how far he can go before this turns into Fire Punch. The actual progression is something that I think was actually written quite well, because we get that. We get his underdog status, and his growth and development is pretty clear and has a fairly steady line where he goes between learning different powers and then learning different techniques and how to implement them, changing his gear. And that is honestly the best part of his development. My only real complaint with his powers development comes a lot later on, when through the powers of One for All, he eventually is able to get multiple different quirks at once. And say what you will about him getting those, I think the development of him using them is a lot less satisfying, just because he doesn't really struggle with it for all too long, and we don't really see that subtle growth of the early seasons. And it does make sense in a way, because he's already developed up to that point, but it just wasn't that entertaining to watch and kind of just felt out of place. Midoriya's character honestly baffles me, not because he is awful, but because Horikoshi was able to make so many of the side characters and even villains have such a powerful resonance and likable personalities. And in that scene, Midoriya, the most average and boring out of all of them. I mean, how'd you fuck that up? I actually cared more about Kirishima and Twice than I did our main character. He kind of remains in this shonen protag, just starts off out with more anxiety and more like a wimp in the beginning, until, well, he gets competent with his powers, then he just kind of stops doing that. Lastly, the pacing is really what got me to stop reading, and I haven't caught up with the most recent episodes, but the entire story takes place over the course of a year. There's a lot of characters and arcs, but about halfway through, quite a few don't go anywhere and just kind of end or have some hanging questions, and you can really sense kind of a crunch or need to end the series. Like, Gran Torino has literally nothing left to do, but when there was a perfectly good time to kill him off, he just continues there and still continues to do nothing throughout the rest of the series. Shigaraki doesn't meaningfully come into his own. Stain and Overhaul have a comeback for, like, I don't know, 10 seconds, and there's really nothing there that's done with them. And just last season, I had heard of Vigilantes coming out. I was iffy on it. It's been years since I watched the series or read the manga, not to mention it came out a few months after the conclusion already came forth, and the Deku slander was crazy, but also really funny to imagine this guy was once the most powerful hero, but then he works at the McDonald's. But I decided to give it a shot, and surprisingly, it's everything I loved about the early seasons, and more. Koichi is your classic shonen protag, just with the issue that he does not have the powers of a protagonist, and doesn't have one unique skill that makes sound weak but leads him to becoming god, or even someone who's impressive with a weak ability but society looks down on them for no reason, and in those cases their weak ability is actually the strongest ability in the world. But hey, what makes me like him is that he is a college kid with a job He has a mildly useful quirk with obvious drawbacks, but even so, he wants to help people regardless. Cleans trash, helps people with directions, and gets mild recognition and mockery. There's a genuineness to his actions that I enjoy. He is a bit of an idiot, but he means well, and I was never frustrated with what he did, because he never did all those shonen protag things, just rushing into danger with no rhyme or reason, or going in like he's the shit. One night, all is going well during his normal routines until he encounters the Three Stooges, who immediately try to fucking murder and assault this young girl, or Pop Step, an idol hero who can jump. They can't really do anything until our final protagonist comes in, Knuckle Duster. Old guy who's strong, has impressive durability. They get out of it and the plot begins. Steroids are on the street. They cause normal people to turn into mindless monsters. Dealing with all that, law enforcement does not particularly like unlicensed heroes doing work. With their three powers together, they can become occasionally competent. Turns out a team with a guy who starts out being able to go about as fast as a bike in a compromised position, a girl that can jump, and an old but very strong guy struggle to take down kaiju and basically knock off Hulk clones. But it's because of that the battles are a lot more interesting and actually have tension far later in the series, as victory is far from assured in every conflict. As the mystery develops, we meet a few other characters and see the beginnings of arcs that seem like they'll have more of a focus in the follow-up seasons, and while usually that would be a mark against it, I think it uses its time pretty efficiently. Like the episode of Stendhal tells you about villain killers and how a world like this, they'd be vigilantes. I liked it as a fan of the Punisher, even though it's not come up again. It sets up a potential future beat in world building. Even in the middle, where little of the main mystery really develops, we see our team of misfits find family within each other, from Koichi's outcast nature, reflecting on his hero's identity as an outcast due to misunderstandings, Soga's simple desire to be an entertainer, even as the weakest of the main cast. I still liked her. The old man has the most going on for initially being the least explored. A lot of cool developments and gets some solid emotional moments at the end. We also get to see how hero life balance kind of works out, because in the series, like, all the actual heroes are licensed and stuff. I don't really get to see that happen in the main series, but with Vigilantes, that is one of my favorite parts, seeing how the interpersonal conflicts mix with hero work. How could I forget the best character, Captain Celebrity, an American serial cheater who gets into lawsuits and is obviously not a Superman clone. He isn't evil, but he cares far more about looking good and being a celebrity than saving people. It's because of this he has some of the funniest bits. Unfortunately, he doesn't really get a ton of screen time. But if you liked early My Hero Academia and maybe fell off of it and you're looking for a good, solid and short anime, I'd recommend this. 7 out of 10. Like, comment, subscribe, and do all those other algorithm good things. Alright, till next time.